my computer. Open chat again, just in case people talk. Well, hello to our, I don't know which number process school it is. I think around 30, 40, somewhere near the ambassador program. And today I will also share, like last time we did more of this task management stuff, because we are a bit of agenda hurry to figure out the proposals to make it more flawless. We're gonna jump in and define like high level of proposal roadmaps and where could we, as our ambassador roles, kind of change that. So yeah, overview. That's the AI is recording us. Usually where these agendas are coming from are from the Discord channel, just so keep in mind. I'm reading that and we'll bring these red sticky notes on the board, except this time. And I actually also shared this idea in the Discord. So I went with the agenda because there was no pushback and more uplifting that, yeah, let's try this. So in the first 10 minutes, I'm going to basically share about the board itself, like what the proposal roadmap means, and then we dive into what are the most relevant questions about the proposal in these stages. In the discussions, basically we also ideate on a few things, but with the purple line, you will it's an activity where we basically take time off and silently brainstorm questions. Then we look at this and have like around 50-minute discussion on what privileges should ambassador role have, if any, in each stage. So when we think of, we're basically setting up like an innovation fund stages here, and where proposals going through, then we ideate on questions what are relevant for this proposal in these different stages. And finally, we look at like how, as ambassadors, can they skip some of these proposals, like, oh, you don't have to have these requirements because you're already a trusted member, and let's just get it started, and all kinds of these discussions. 20 minutes we also spend on time answering questions near the proposal creation stage. So when we come up with questions, for example, what type of proposals we have, what requirements proposal should include, and we have like maybe 10 or 20, or I don't know how many crazy ideas we can come up with. We can also do some quicker voting if there is a lot of them, but basically to spend the time to answer a few of them. And we end up with a session overview and see how far did we get, and if we need to repeat. And the end goal for PES would be to kind of prepare the stage for new work groups to kind of have a good draft ready for tomorrow's incubation on, and in the Treasury coil actually selecting and rewarding or planning that proposal to be rewarded. Yeah, so this will be the starting point, and the T-work link also created. So if you are new and usually don't see your name in this, then just to notice that, give yourself a sign up so that you don't get missed out. However, right now, maybe blank code, I will say, and Eric might have to check the T-work, because the rest of the names I won't be able to find. We think of as we want to have a proposal going through, and we have a few examples of what proposals are already coming. So our high-level work group, something that Stephen is running, process modeling workgroup. So basically, this same session will be then started to be run in process meetings or process modeling meetings rather than here. And T-work PPL, because we a lot work in T-work, have a project-based learning documentation and guides, like how do we onboard each other to this, and would be necessary. And then there is actually more tooling we offered from us. Downlens created a participation recognition pipeline, and they have their own requirements and demands. And so when we see these kind of proposals, main stopping gaps, I will see that we have a creation stage, and like for the time where proposal is being created. And once it's being created, there is like at some point we actually execute on it and make it sure that it's done. And somewhere have, I guess it's also an audit stage. And after that is done, it would be nice to have it end up with archival, because this is where we basically start deriving our background knowledge for the LLM. And the first two questions would be, what proposal stages are missing in between of these, and what proposal stages are missing in the edges? So between creation, execution, is there some stage we could add? And yeah, and or like execution and audit, or at what, or something that happens after archival? Should there be something more that we come back to, or before creation, before we start creating a proposal, should be there something else in mind? So yeah, let's right now discuss about it. The open mic, basically, drop in your ideas, and Felix.
Since the Bitcoin improvement proposals, all proposal processes on blockchain have been a little bit on the same, let's say, structure, where you have main categories like creation of proposal, submission, evaluation, implementation. And I would divide through two different kinds of proposals. One's proposal which request budgets, and those who don't. Because those who request budget may go through other audit, for example, or approval before implementing, then those who maybe say, hey, we do this just as, for example, AI workgroup. We don't submit any requests for funds, we just go for it. But let's say we would want to get the approval on something.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what I would right now, let's expand into all types of proposals. So if there are stages, like the maximum amount of stages we could have. So if some doesn't mean that has a submission, but another type has, then like right now, let's get most detailed out. Randall brought up a few sticky notes. So identifying, so we would put it on all under context setting, or they would be all different stages, like first you do this, then you do this, then you do this, or would you see them as a one bundle?
I could see maybe breaking it down further, but in general, being able for the community to recognize gaps that we would like to fill can be a good, without having to say, we want to do it by writing this proposal. This can be a way to get multiple teams offering proposals to address those gaps and objectives.
Yeah, I think definitely there can be work done to kind of identify those more clearly. I know it took months to kind of see those things for myself when I originally came in. So for sure, we can kind of transcend these information silos between us.
So we have context setting. Once we know, we have identified basically what we want to do, then we create it. Does then context setting kind of happen in incubation workgroup? Is that the place where to kind of align it with entire ambassador program? Or we could actually context setting is incubation, but the identifying this could happen anywhere. So we basically have a stage before context setting. So basically getting to know who can even make proposals. Do they have to be somewhat contributors? Like, do they need to understand the way we work, to join stuff? Any thoughts here?
I think perhaps there's, thank you. I think perhaps this identification of the gaps is something we can kind of perhaps make a channel, like a feedback channel, where like a ticketing system on DWork or something like this. On some level, I think if no matter what the level of person that comes in, if we're getting the same question over and over again, then there needs to be something done about that. Yeah.
It sounded like you were saying something about bringing people on board, onboarding.
Yeah, like how it seemed to work with like through these past weeks in AI sandbox, we identified the need, or rather we saw the evidence that we needed to kind of get premium AI tools, which were then in next week's incubation discussed and okayed with consensus during that meeting. Yeah, so it has worked in that way, and it's very open to that and changing.
On identifying gaps, I think just Stephen, for example, with the archival workgroup made a really good example there how to move forward, because it wasn't pointed by the ambassadors program that we have a lack, let's say, for example, in documentation. I think we have been aware, but it was never stated somehow. Then Stephen joined some months ago. Start to engage all the time, going already in action, setting up already the Git book, starting the archival work, and then afterwards submitting the proposal. But the proposal emerged already from gaps which have been identified by new joining community members themselves, and which then go in action first, looking, okay, does it work? Does it work also with the environment and all this stuff? And then getting the next step into a proposal. Just quite interesting process, actually.
It feels like it creates good opportunity for fewer proposals that are more collaborative. Not to say that the ideal would be one proposal per gap, but given a set of people that agree, yeah, this is the proposal we want to do, maybe one would be enough. Or maybe in another case, another set of people look and say, that's fine, but we want to do this other thing. More cooperative, more maybe complementary projects might emerge from that sort of a process. And I think that would be, for me, an objective: more collaborative, more complementary, less competitive.
Which agree. And one thing also, when you go to the TIFO again, when you go back into the draft document for the archival workgroup, because this is, Steve, he took some stuff what I invited him into the governance workgroup before he started the archival workgroup. So we started to set up a document there. And if you scroll down, one thing what is actually a really nice point is collaboration. Exactly. Stop, a little bit up, exactly. Which existing guild and work groups would be closest collaborators for achieving the proposed goal? So to say that the proposal directly relates as well to which working groups bodies exist already in the space and how important are each of these to implement your proposal. So since the beginning, you target already the mindset, okay, the individual and the work group, for the best success, they need to collaborate with the system around them as well. So, yes. Vanessa, yes, your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, Stephen and I collaborated on writing that. And one of the things that was the hardest was when we got to the budget. And I guess one of the things is it's just not that transparent. Like, you know, we were scratching our heads like, what should we write here? So it feels like that might be something that should be addressed when people are trying to I mean, I think writing a proposal is quite a good way, and then people can jump in and comment and all that. But it's really hard to know what to say on budget.
Actually, Vanessa, one question there to you. Was it through the proposal creation clear for you what the available budget is?
Nah, not really.
Okay. This was almost just, okay, this is something what has to be much more clear then. Because you can't come up with any budget if you don't know what you can ask for, right? Like,
I mean, you can in a sense,
for you, then?
can say, look, this is fair, this would be fair, and this is what it costs. And I'm kind of always a supporter of full cost recovery, at least notionally. So you put forward what it would cost, and then maybe SNet says, yeah, well, we ain't got that. And we say, well, okay, we'll do it for, we do the work for what there is, but we need to keep in mind how under it is, or however it is, if that ever happens, which I doubt. But do you know what I mean? It's just like all the work that we do, all of us, all the time, for not a lot of money. It's good to keep in mind what that would really cost. That's all.
I agree with you, Vanessa, and I found it very interesting that Stephen, somewhere at the beginning of this proposal, started raising the subject, at least that's my interpretation, of a different formula of compensation. For instance, we've been working on a base $10 an hour in SNet just to get something settled. Stephen brought up a concept, and I believe it was Stephen, and I don't like ever
It was
speak.
actually me. we wrote it together, but if you're going to talk about pay for the task rather than an hourly rate, that's one of my little hobby horses. So
Yeah, that and the expertise of the person
Yeah,
is how
yeah.
I took it. So I have a PhD in one subject and a master's in another subject, but I'm here working for $10 an hour as a retiree. So, how does that fit into your budget and your proposal?
How does it fit in?
Well, yeah, you have a budget request, a proposal, but you're not asking for any money. So to me, it's an incomplete document.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's pending. I mean, yeah, we didn't know what to write. So
Right.
I don't
And you
think it's
just,
meant to be finished necessarily. I think we're putting it forward and asking for input and advice and thinking.
Yeah,
What
that's
else?
what this is about.
Yeah.
And you've already, I want to play poker with you someday, but you've already said it's open for negotiations.
I mean, in the end, it's what we've got to look at is things like, what are other work groups doing their work for? There's got to be parity. There's got to be some level of equality about, we've got to look at what we can afford and what things are worth. But I just feel a little bit of untransparency around those issues, and it always comes up with money, doesn't it? It's always a bugger.
It does, and we're all dancing around that subject, and we've all been dancing around that subject. And I guess to some extent, I'm the bull in the china shop, and I just say, hey, let's pay it, let's get it done, get those people paid. And I believe in full compensation, and whatever we get paid here, it's not enough. So what you should do if you're asking for advice, in my opinion, if it were me, I would rate my qualities at a dollar amount for what I think it's worth, and I would put that in the proposal and ask for it.
Yeah, I think that's obviously something we could do, but I think in the wider context of what we're talking about in this conversation, we're thinking about general things about how people could put in proposals and what the roadmap should be, and what kinds of information we have to add into that to help people with doing that. I mean, we can all look at, what does an archivist normally earn? And it depends where you live, doesn't it? So that's another layer in an international community, is where do you live? So it's not always as simple as just putting in a dollar amount. Bear in mind, I've got to do a conversion to do that.
These are
Maybe
also
also
questions which the supervisory council are dealing with, and the Sway platform is kind of open to these discussions. So I think it's very interesting that we're having these conversations concurrently, and we'll be able to in some time kind of see how the council develops in this as well. I think it's all very relevant questions, very big, great fractaling stuff.
maybe coming back to the proposal roadmap, because let's not go too deep into the budgets, because it's very related but separate topic, I would say.
Yeah.
And for example, on the roadmap, who's the addressed? To who is the proposal written actually?
Ambassador program. To us.
Is this clear? Is this sure?
I don't know. I'm assuming.
Well, who says yes, no on the funding allocation? Is that a ambassador responsibility?
Oh, that's a good
Usually
question.
it's been everybody who joins the call, and it's
Yeah, we're still working on that one.
Yeah, supervisory council gives us an allocation of their budget. And then we're due for an update this month on how that continues. And so far, supervisory council has been non-existent. So we've just been going for it.
I don't know nothing about supervisory council, by the way. Anyway, so we have started a bit of more onboarding, more clarity, this proposal more map at the start. But let's assume we did get to creation, we start refining, then we have, we submit that, then we evaluate, and then we audit. Should this be vice versa? That we audit it first and then we evaluate? Or no, you actually even put it before submission? Isn't that already like completing?
Well, then no, evaluation is after submission, but auditing is on the same page like executing. Like execution and audit would be at the same time.
I would say actually, okay, let's do it then.
Because you want to audit the process of the successful implementation of the proposal. If it plays out that you don't have audits over or anybody who can see if the proposal is actually implemented as proposed, then the proposal itself becomes quite a funny thing.
Okay, and then we move it to the archival and nothing happens after that. Yes, Wani.
Just want to suggest that maybe something should happen after that. There are issues when you put in a proposal for anything, whether it's a funding one or something like this, about intellectual property, I suppose you'd call it. People sometimes get scared to put something forward in case somebody nicks their idea or whatever. But then there is also the question that if something doesn't get used and it goes into some kind of an archive, people maybe should be able to pick it up and, you know, reimagine it at some future date. Now, obviously, those are two clashing things, and I think it's important to resolve what the rules are on that. If somebody submitted something, it didn't get accepted, and you can see a way to do it better, are you kind of obliged to have a word with them and bring them in on it? You know, all those kind of questions.
Would the evaluation be after the submission? And at what point do they get paid on a proposal, or where is payment made?
Payment usually after approval, right?
After auditing, because we use DWork, and if we use the same logic, then it would be.
Well, it depends. Some proposal will, for example, have budget allocations where they say they need, for example, 1 or 2 tools, and they need upfront budgets, for example. This is something what we know quite well already from innovation funds.
Well, that Felix raises a good question. Approval. Where is it approved and how is it approved?
So each of the yellow sticky notes, maybe we should understand as a question: how to archive, how to implement, how to evaluate, how to submit, how to create.
And how to tell the difference between a proposal that we want to take and fund as a big bang versus doing active ongoing project management and ongoing fluid funding.
What do you mean by big bang? Would that be a deep funding proposal?
Well, like everything that's done in the Catalyst Fund is big bang, even if it's a small project. Propose now, wait until approval. Then you go and do your project, you finish it, you get paid. It's a big thing, and the administration component is hands off mostly, as opposed to all of the activity I've seen here, which is more active management and week by week and month by month. Maybe that's a larger topic or proposition of there being a different way.
I think
Well,
it's a very, I think it's a, I think it's a very good point, and it brings up the how the ambassador program has developed, and up until quite recently, it was more fill in where you can, and kind of there are being retroactive rewards once this kind of value has been demonstrated on a kind of ongoing basis. And I see that, yeah, this transition trying to, in a sense, now we've caught up with those rewards and what people have done before. Now we can start to kind of look forward and plan these new ways of creating projects, both in this kind of liquid ongoing scale and more of a proposal basis. I guess one thing I see that the ambassador program being generally an incubator of is projects which can go on then for a larger deep funding proposal, and that the ambassador program is quite a nice place to kind of develop an MVP or to demonstrate something which can be developed further as a kind of deep funding bang proposal.
Okay, let's step to another section. For those who are laggy, they can also use Zoom chat. So we now have a bit of like a roadmap for the proposal journey itself, and we definitely brought up a bunch of questions already, but let's spend another 5 minutes doing so, but not trying to find solutions or answers. And so what are the most relevant questions about the proposal in each of these stages? So under every section, I kind of tried to put like under creation questions. So when the proposal reaches to creation, what are the main questions for proposals? If we are setting a context, what are the budget potential proposals? And when we get into our high well, what questions we have are about our high well. And yeah, we can also use these context which are up here that are like respecting intellectual property. The question would be, how do we manage intellectual property? What are the possibilities for people to opt in or opt out their proposals? Like once they submit, can they remove it? And how can we make it simple? So any questions you're coming up, and basically right now is the time to brainstorm. And if you're on Zoom, you can tell me the stage, creation, evaluation, and what questions below that you would want to address. I can see already getting a bunch of them, so later we can use Miro for voting to highlight the most fundamental.
What do you think also by Rev also looking only on theory? In this regard, also looking on, okay, what do we have right now? A really nice example with the archival workgroup, which has a well-drafted outline proposal already, which went already through a certain process. This is what we can document. And looking on this very example, getting it through, looking, okay, how do we get it through? Documentate our and archive our actions, and then iterate and evolve. Say, oh, okay, the next proposal is coming up. How can we improve the process here? Now, what did we learn from the first one? And also from this side, taking what we know already from practical knowledge from Catalyst, Project Deep Funding, other innovation funds or whatnot, or CIPs or ARCs or whatnot, but taking this only as a guidance or orientation for some parts, but the real knowledge really building up by executing on implementing proposals actually, one by one, step by step, and each time iterating and improving.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think we should also do it from both sides, though, having these broad visions together, like what we would want the perfect process to be like, but then yeah, coming back to reality and trying to actually get at least one proposal through this. Vani, your hands up.
I mean, yeah, I totally like what you were saying about kind of iterating and maybe getting this one through and then seeing how we can iterate, but maybe it's making it too complicated. But I'd really like there to be pluralism built in. We wrote that proposal because we write it the way we write it. It might not suit another kind of proposal, and I think we really need to keep, I don't want to call them proposers, but people who might propose an idea, we need to keep them at the forefront and let people try and do it how they need to do it, and then see how it fits into whatever decision-making process is agreed on. You know, I kind of feel really conscious that the way we wrote the archiving one suits that. It might not suit everything.
And then we see then what other proposals come up and look how the system which we take is set in place for the first one is adaptable and adaptable to new ones then. So the goal should always be how adaptable is the process to proposals, not how adaptable are proposals to the process.
Exactly.
It's actually a really good key learning. Huh? Oh, cool. I love sessions. Just writing cool stuff. Because I think educational work group or guild might also come up with a proposal soon. Could be a second one. Then maybe for a governance work group, there could be another proposal coming up somewhere. So we can get them through step by step, each one, and not getting a second one through until we didn't get the first one through.
I wonder if there's a way that we could come up with like what is the essential information that people need in order to make a decision, and then like how you write it and how you structure it might be up to you, but
And on this one, Tivo, I would love to add a note to say that on some sort, in the best case, we would have two kinds of proposals. One type, the official document, and on the other one's the proposal wrapped into a transaction metadata, which we can submit as a transaction to, for example, approve a proposal directly on chain. That wrote this.
Too crazy. I don't have time for it. But yeah, definitely. Well, for now, does anybody feel like some questions are missing? Nothing is added. If it feels good, you can also take it as an homework, go through this later time. But now we take our we have few ambassadors in this call also, put like an ambassador role hat into the face now and see like if you are the highest, because ambassadors are kind of the highest position in this program now, what privileges can we give these people, and how could we kind of make it faster, like field extension, like to get proposal through. Like if the proposal is created by an ambassador, is there a requirement to create this context setting creation requirement, or there are ways to kind of differentiate it with like members who are joining in as a new member and proposing a proposal.
I can see
So-
that potentially being differences, but at the same time feel like context setting, like if I or you or no anybody with the ambassador role would make a proposal, that context setting is still not to be skipped on. Yeah, but there might be slight differences. I'm not really sure. But
Yeah,
we can come up with a situation where there would be a difference.
yeah, it's interesting because as very familiar people to the ecosystem, we already have some idea about blockers and this context, so it's a lot easier to kind of create work groups or solutions because we've already done the examination in a way. So how can we make this knowledge really available to people proposing? And what does it need from proposers? Does it need like a sit down with a small group where people can really ask questions and ask anything about the ambassador program for kind of context and background information to make proposals? Yeah.
So if ambassadors took a note, ambassadors have easier time to create workshops due to knowledge of the context. So if we already know they have a good context, they know what's the problem, and they create the proposal, and when they create the proposal, do they have to go this vigorous step of doing like something like this? Or as I added here more like simple versions, let me see whether are like just a roadmap, a budget, some people who are doing it, and few like how it's related, what we're doing, and that's basically it. And compared to now, what Stefan has done, this like already in a high level, like much more information. So should there be like differences, or even as an ambassador, I should actually answer some basic questions like why, and like have a clear same structure to answer all the proposals. So we are able to compare them instead of going with the gut, yes, we trust that person and just do your thing.
I guess that one main differentiator would be, does the proposer request funds or not? Then there might be different processes taking place actually, maybe.
Yeah, let's then say it is taking money. It costs for everybody that an ambassador is going to do something. So let's yeah, for example, this process modeling, like we are having right now a process modeling session, not as that detailed, that same framework, but we are doing the processes. We are at the first iteration. Now, instead of having it in process build, I want to do in work group, but allocating a lot of rewards because it's basically another process build, just that like now it's very specific scope. But if you do it over time and adding all these meeting summaries and meeting prep into that, and also allocating some time to actually create the documentation, it will cost around $50, $100 per 2 months. Is there a budget limit, or there is like clear to do it and have to do still the same proposal as everybody else, or because I'm in this role, I can bypass all of that and basically would have started? What would have happened a few weeks ago if I wouldn't have failed the coordination?
Yeah, in my mind, I don't see arguments for having different requirements, but open to be proven wrong.
So you will say that everybody goes through the proposal process the same way. Doesn't matter is it ambassador or not.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. I mean, it really depends on what the scope is. Like, for example, this the current one we were looking at, that's like insanely detailed. It feels like at the same time, like if this is creating like a work group with requesting budget for 3 people, you know, so that's quite big. But if, let's say, I don't know, something like the AI sandbox, if you want to go with something like that, yeah, for sure, you don't need like this whole formal. Yeah, it's not the most concrete. Sorry, but in my mind that should be way simpler. But that's not, wouldn't be based on Felix and Fly being ambassadors. That would simply be on the scope of the thing that gets proposed.
Although
So
AI
that's
sandbox
such a-
and archive workgroup are technically a same capacity work, like maybe a sandbox is even perhaps more budgeting, more costly than archival work.
I don't think so. No,
It depends.
archival works will spend much more constant time.
Yeah, there's like
And there were-
more content probably, like which we can see, but in the same, in one sense, to me, they are actually like same level as like the project. Both can take time, of course. Yeah, then it's
I guess it really depends on the style, the style of the work group, and not necessarily the content, but the kind of facilitation of that, and whether that is how much that does need forward planning, and how much it can be like with the AI sandbox, almost just like an experiment of just, okay, how guerrilla can we make it, and exploring this in a different direction. So I like what I think Vanessa was saying about the pluralism, like enabling different proposals depending on their needs. And also I think that for me it's relevant to think about what the ambassador role has enabled. And for me it's very much enabled having to create work groups and workshops to just experiment and then see if something works to then scale it afterwards. But I think both are kind of relevant to each other as we scale.
Yeah, I think that's super important what you're saying there, Fly. And it just occurred to me then that if somebody came up and said, I've got an idea, and you just go, oh, well, shape it in the way that suits the idea. For some people, they're going to go, yeah, that's brilliant. I get that. And for some people, they're going to go, I don't know what you mean. I don't know where to start. And I'm just thinking, somewhere in this marable, there's something that says that maybe ambassadors should support people or advise people. And I think that is really important in terms of if somebody doesn't quite know how they want to put their proposal or what style of working they want to use, maybe that's a conversation. Maybe you can't get that by writing guidance notes or something. It needs to be like a chat with someone.
Totally agree.
Yeah, that's a great point. Maybe once an idea gets to the point where it requires like a more specific budget, AI Sandbox and Archive's a good example of projects that have been experimenting and then get to a point where they're like, oh, I need some budget, like AI tooling last week. It's like, they need some AI tools, things like that. So maybe once it gets to the point of discussing budget, we do kind of have something people can fill out specific to that. And then some people for proposals are going to have really in-depth proposals like Archive. And I feel like something like AI Sandbox is, I don't know, it's up to you guys, of course, but I can't see it being like a super in-depth like proposal in the future for a budget. It just seems kind of obvious what you guys need over time.
that leads to final agenda items, like that depends on style of proposal. can guilds or ambassadors finance longer term ideas without the proposal? So it's just a bit similar, but we now mentioned like depends of a style of proposal. So do we as like if a guild has 33% of like budget, does that mean if a proposal is less than budget, that guild could technically fund it all the way through without all of this? Or what it can allow is only that approval can be just done by one guild, just that guild picks it up and approves that submission. Otherwise, if no guild picks it up, then it's more comes from like a treasury, like a general treasury from every guild kind of, because the budget are then going to change a bit. Or ambassadors can kind of say that every ambassador gives 1% of their rewards into that new proposal, like because it is going to every approval will thin something from anybody, but perhaps you can also direct it. Yeah, one in your hand up.
Yeah, I'm still just trying to imagine how it would work for somebody who was quite new and had noticed a need and didn't know where to go with it. What if the first step in the proposal was if you've got an idea, you can either start a thread on Discord or you can have a meeting about it where people can like put in ideas and help you thrash it out, unless of course you feel sure you know how you want to write it up and you just want to go to that. But just having that as an option as a first step for people, because I can kind of imagine if it's the kind of proposal that you can write in a text-based document, that's one thing. But if it isn't, you might not yet quite know what it is until you talk it through with people. That's kind of how I'm seeing it.
Oh, I think most was covered.
So you have two questions. Where are people able to post ideas? Where are people can ask for help to create a proposal? And what that actually brings up is this proposal stuff always open. So we don't have any cadence. So as soon as somebody comes up, we just put it through the pipeline and share it. And it's basically, if there is going to be a lot of income, a lot of people, and our capacity runs out to address that, then we deal it right then, or we kind of give us right now a safeguard that if it scales up, then we kind of say that no, we don't accept proposals until these are done or something.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think it's a solution, but just off the top of my head, maybe it's like almost a once a month type of thing where we can like have a meeting where we have the proposals and we kind of talk about it, or maybe a quarterly thing where we kind of discuss how the budget could fit into this proposal, whether or not that proposal fits, why or why not type of thing.
I agree on the points you said, Kron. Though on the other side, the cycle-based funding has definitely some, let's say, advantages, but also some disadvantages. Let's say, for example, proposal doesn't go through, have to wait 4 months until the next time it can submit, for example. This can be quite damaging, actually. So
Yeah.
there is already a lot of experience with the cycle-based funding through Catalyst and SingularityNet, though we don't have any capacity or knowledge built yet to say what would happen if we keep it open all the time. And we manage the structure not to handle cycles, but to handle the environment constantly all the time.
Yeah, I think these are really good points. And I really see that on some level, we can facilitate community members to get onto that cycle with deep funding and Catalyst and others by providing this very like grassroots playground to explore and to develop things. And like it might be that someone proposes a work group or a guild that there isn't capacity for in the program, and then like I would love it if we don't just say no to a proposal, but kind of, okay, really try and make it work. And what can we do to facilitate that idea? if it needs, say, a chunk of cycle funding, can we facilitate the development of a proposal for deep funding within the ambassador program and become kind of a bridge to for these projects and people?
Kind of hoping incubation could become a spot where people can just bring their ideas and everybody can just talk about it. I don't want it to be a decision-making spot or anything like that. But I think Stephen's going to talk about the proposal tomorrow and just provide an extra spot in the week where people can just come hang out and hear people's ideas and hash them out. Then it's kind of hard to like communicate what was done in that meeting to something else. We need some spot to like make a vote or decision. So I'm not sure what the solution would be for that.
Yeah. Well, we did discuss, I guess, the need for anonymous voting recently.
Just can I drop one last thought to the part of argument for keeping the submission phase open all the time? Maybe because Syncom DAO at one point will most likely also have a proposal process somehow. And having deep fund on cycle based and ambassadors with open cycles actually gives a really nice position then, where we can take best learnings and key lessons from two different models and feed it into Syncom DAO.
Yeah, very strongly agree with that.
Yeah, so let's kind of consolidate information. So today we had a bit of fun trying to figure out the proposal process, what journey a proposal could live through. There were, of course, discussions that there can be different styles of proposals, so some may deviate on their usual track as always. And we touched a bit of how much budgeting GUILs or work groups have, and are they able to kind of just fund from their budget, but looks like we're not going to add these extra layers, and mostly all proposals kind of go this same structure. And only difference perhaps could be the style of proposal, and that it may require a different like it is not that peak of a scope, and that could get through the system faster. Then there's a lot of questions, some notes on each of these stages. So these are something that we are come back every now and then. And you know that we have few proposals coming through this week. So this is something to also, when you are a proposer and you want to bring up proposal front, this is something that we haven't figured out yet. Like all of this is totally new. We're just pulling it as we go. So yeah, take your note, give your ideas, and join in upcoming meetings to get these questions answered. I think over the week in different GUILs, we will touch on these, and when we some point come back to this and start answering them, we probably have already some experience. And in Treasury GUIL, we will then hope to see that one bunch of this stuff is done, and they look into how to improve and figure that out on the spot when we have the proposal in front of us. And I think we are able to do these emergent decisions. So yep, with this, I will conclude process GUIL. Any
Two
final
questions,
thoughts?
Thibault.
Yeah, sure.
Two questions. What is the next step for the archival workgroup proposal then?
Incubation workshop tomorrow, and on Thursday we will finalize that and figure this out into the Treasury costs.
And second question, because if everybody agrees that we actually start to implement the proposal process, this actually means we build our own innovation fund within the ambassadors program, which is actually quite cool. Just wanted to hint this out.
Technically, we have been doing innovation fund from almost day one, but we just didn't realize it.
Yes, we didn't formalize it.
I mean, the scope will be somewhat limited monetarily wise, but
Yes,
that won't hold it back.
The thought what matters.
but and
Innovation matters.
maybe that's really important, and this is actually really cool that we have the emergence of this income DAO now, that we can always put the actions or the process from ambassadors broken in direct relation to emerging income DAO. But for example, in this regard, to say it's quite true that we are financially, let's say, the most limited body within SingularityNet, because Deep Fund has more budget, and I think here, Supervisory Council also has more budget, though. We have some advance in social finance incentives. We're pretty strong. We have 2,700 tracked tasks in direct relation to SingularityNet so far, which is quite a lot. And this is maybe something where we can play much more our focus on as well. Saying, oh, okay, these proposals, maybe also looking more to identify proposals which might be important and relevant even without budget allocation, simply to say, how do we express people their engagements from sometimes, and much more counting on social incentives and building up, for example, then a reputation on our end already with contributors, which once again will become very relevant in the latest income DAO, which maybe will also rely a lot on reputation or meritocratic systems. From our part, we would be able to build already some quite valid and strong data sets which can be used for this then.
Absolutely, and I think all that will help, like you know, for securing funding also as well. For like, you know, right now we only had for the year 1 tokens of the Supervisory Council, we got a third allocated, but I think we're well on our way on you know, adding enough value to yeah, just simply ask for extensions or yeah, we'll see how it develops. But yeah, really, it's just all moving in the really cool direction.
I think it's really, really interesting to just listen to the conversation, and it's really cool to see the direction everything is going. As I tried to briefly mention, even though I was like conflicted with myself about the time, but the progression from the first year and how everything is shaping up, especially considering how this is, I guess, as from the ground up as things can be. So yeah, really happy to listen in and see how everything is gonna turn out.
Yeah, man, you've been with us from the start. Looking forward to getting deeper with it. Nice, man.
And Eric, really nice to still see you around. I still remember you from the very first Ambassador Town Halls as well, where you and Norik and architects have been around.
I mean, I've been talking to Fly a little bit about this, but you know, I'm just still sort of waiting to see where I could really make some stuff happen. And I don't know if I told you this, Fly, but so I'm talking to a friend who has his own algorithm, which is currently applying for a patent for, and he's really interested in seeing how he can port that over to both the SingularityNet platform, potentially using NTX for computing resources. So I'm not worried about the about the roadmap where you know, that things take time, but all good things take time. So
on this, if there is something that I was gonna say, it was already said. So I look forward to having this process implemented. Yeah, that's about it.